Okay, so let's see. You can hop into Cinema 4D and you can just start playing around and you can make some cool stuff, especially if you know what you're doing. But if you know what you want to make, I suggest starting with pencil and paper or reference pictures, doing just a little bit of research on what you're wanting to make. Um, an idea in your head, just, you might have some good ideas. Um, well, sketch those out because as you start getting into Cinema 4D and you're clicking all these buttons and stuff, you want to stay focused on what's going on. So here's a couple reference photos. Here's a claw, and you've got some hydraulics here, and some points where some different arms connect. So hinges, I guess you'd want to call those. Here's another. This is, I just did a Google image search for robot arms or robotic arms, and this is, you got a pivot point, and this is a real simple design. You basically got two flat parts holding some servos, and the inner part is narrower than the outer part, and the outer part here is the same width as the outer part here. So one more, we'll take another look here. This one's an actual model, and there's a little bit more creativity. Right here, this rotates, I think, and then here it pivots, and right here I'm not sure exactly what this does. It probably rotates down there. I think this is a model on Turbo Squid or something. I just wanted to look at some reference photos. Having a general idea of what you want to do is a good idea. So with that said, let's hop into Cinema 4D. I'm going to go ahead and close this. No, I don't want to save. There's different designs. There's different things you can do. I highly recommend having your PSR zero out button. It's going to be helpful in this. And you will see we'll use it a lot. So let's get started. The main modeling tools that I used mostly were the extrude. I used a little bit of the inner extrude. I used the knife tool a little bit. And I used the hyper objects. I wanted that kind of rounded, futuristic, smooth feel to it. Now, when I first started, I really wanted to go for a look of something sitting on a factory floor for a long time. I really wanted a rusty, dirty metal look to it. Something a little bit older, but I had a hard time with the materials. Turns out I really need to learn more about making materials, working with the diffusion channel. Also, some people call the diffusion channel the dirt map. Some of the other programs you might call it the dirt map. So I changed it to the glossy white futuristic look. Okay, so what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to just make a cube, and I'm going to stretch it out, and I'm going to go into my view where I can see it like this. This is my right camera, and I'm going to move my anchor point down. Okay, So I need to make it editable first. So let's do that. I'm going to click on my object, press C on my keyboard. That makes it editable. And then I can move my anchor point. So I'm going to move my anchor point down. And if I just hold shift, it'll snap in even increments. So 800 is fine. And the reason I did that is I want this to be my pivot point. Now I'm just going to do a rough modeling here. So I'm going to copy that cube, holding Control, drag, drop. All right, and I'm going to take Apple Z, click off of your anchor point button, and I'm just going to move that down to the end here. Okay, let's go ahead and go into perspective view. And I want to just show you the basics of how this my model worked. So what I need is a null object, and I'm going to rename this null object controller. Okay, and I think I spelled that wrong. I'm going to click on my null object, and I'm going to go to user data, add user data, and I'm going to add 2 bend controllers. So I'm just going to name this one arm bend 1. Now I want it to be a float slider, and I want it to be in degrees. So when you're setting these up, you really need to think about what you're doing. I am going to be rotating. And you should know that when you're rotating, you're dealing with angles, and angles are measured in degrees. So now minimum and maximum I'm going to keep right here, but later I will be changing those so that my geometry does not intersect each other. But for this example, and even when I started mine, you can slide it to get the perfect amount of degrees and then set those numbers here. So let's go ahead and let's see, arm bend 1, float slider, degree, we're good there. So I'm going to add data, and I'm going to call this arm bend 2. It is also going to be a float slider, and it is also going to be in degrees. Now there's a chance I could have just copied these. Let's see if we can copy these. Nope. Okay. There might be a way to just copy one if they're so similar and then just change the name. I'm going to click OK. And what I have is 2 sliders down here. And they go from 0 to 360 in 6.1 seconds. Alright, so what I want to do is I'm going to add a expresso tag to my controller. So I'm going to go to Tags, Cinema 4D Tags, Expresso. And in the background you may hear a little as I steam my milk for my cappuccino. I need to drag out my controller, and I'm going to load in my user data here on the output side. So click, go down to user data, arm bend 1, click, go down to user data, arm bend 2. So I have my arm bend 1 and arm bend 2, and I want those to control something. Well, let's take a look here. I have my cube, and this one's already called cube 1, so I'm going to call this one cube 2. And I want them to control my cubes, so I'm going to drag these out. Cube 2 and cube 1. Okay, so I want my expresso arm bend 1 to control cube 1 and arm bend 2 to control cube 2. Well, what do I want them to control? Well, I've got to set that up. Now, I can set it up by doing this, and let's see. If I drop it on the blue input port, it will automatically open this up. And what I want to do, Let's see. I didn't get my reference. Let me see. I need to go to here and go to my coordinates. And I think it's the pitch. Yes, I want to affect the pitch. Okay, so zero that back out. I want arm bend 1 to affect the coordinates, rotation, pitch. And I want arm bend 2 to control the coordinates, rotation, pitch. Okay, now one thing I could I can do this, but and then I'm going to Apple Z it. So let's go to user data. If you click on your controller and you don't see your user data, you can just go here, and there we go. We're all done. You can go home now. Okay, so here we have our arm bending, and it's going in 360 degrees, which is not what we want. But what happens when we do this one? Okay, if the base of my robot or my crane or whatever I'm creating is over here, I want when this one moves to affect this one. So what I need to do is I need to make sure that I need to make this one a child of this one. So now, watch what happens. That one bends when I bend it. But this one also bends when I bend this one. And that's what I want. Okay, so like if this was a crane, I would be like, working all day. Like Fred Flintstone. Okay, so that is the general makeup of what we have. Let's go ahead. I'm going to drag out a copy, but I'm just immediately going to drop it back in there. And I'm going to call this one 3. And I'm going to go to my controller, and I'm going to zero both of these back out. I'm going to take this one, and I want to do a couple things to it. For one, I want to drag it out that way. But I also want to scale it down, so make it shorter. Whoops. So there we go. I'm going to drag out cube 3. I need to go to my controller. I need to go to my user data, add user data. I'm going to call this arm bend 3. Float slider, degree, OK. Come here, set up my user data arm bend 3. And come here, and I need to set it up so that it is affecting coordinates, rotation, rotation, pitch. Now, because when I set this one up, I automatically made it a child automatically of the one above it. It's a lot like the joints when you're dealing with the character tools. Why am I not using character tools? Good question. Probably because I need to learn more about character tools. So you see, I need to order these a little different, but you can see now that now I've got this kind of creating the crane look. Okay? I could keep going and just add a bunch on here. But this is the general premise of the entire robot arm. This is how it's made. So I could take these cubes and I could start modeling with them and making them look more cool, more realistic, using a combination of the hyper nurbs, the knife tool, and such. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make them all intersect nicely. So I'm going to zero them all back out. And let's go into our top view. And let's zoom in on where they're intersecting. And I want to click here. So what I need to do is I need to deal with this overlapping geometry. I'm going to go to Mesh, Create Tools, and I need my polygon button. So I'll hit that. Now I'll go into Create Tools, and I can use my knife. I also want to come over to the mode, and I want to choose Loop, so that I am making a loop cut. And I'm going to come just a little bit back away from where they're overlapping, and I'm going to clip to make a cut. I'm also going to just make 2 more cuts in here, and then I'm going to make a cut down the middle, and then here and here. And what this is doing is just giving me some geometry to work with. Now these here, these cuts, I don't necessarily need those, and there's tools. I'm not getting into a lot of geometry here, so I'm not worried about a few extra polygons. These are quite large. It's not like they're tiny itty bitty polygons that, you know, there's 1,000 of them there. But whenever you're working in modeling, you should always keep in mind how many polygons you're using and how many you're making, creating, modifying. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I need to think about the design that I want to use for this. I'm going to grab my rectangle selection tool, and I'm going to take these 2 pieces here and push them in. And then what I'm going to do is create a narrow part of this second arm that fits into there. So let me draw, let's see, how do I best want to do this? I'm still on my polygon selection. I'm going to go bring this into larger, close my expresso window. Okay. Alright, one thing I'm noticing, only select visible elements. So I'm going to uncheck that. So I'm going to draw and get rid of, let's see here. I'm going to get rid of these 4 polygons here, and I'm just going to delete. Now, what I just did is I made it so that there's going to be a hole over here, and we're going to use our close polygon for that. But that pretty much just did what I wanted to do. Let's go ahead, and I'm going to go here, and we can look at our geometry and see what we created. I'm going to grab this child and go into modeling mode and scoot it down out of the way. And you can see here that we took the polygon faces off, but now we have holes. That isn't exactly what we want. So there's a couple different tools you can use to get rid of that. Let's use them both. Let's see. So I need this cube selected. First I'm going to use my bridge tool, and I'm going to use go to edge mode, go to mesh. Let's see, it's the create tools bridge, and I'm going to click on that outer area, and I'm going to drag down, and do that again here. I'm dragging from one edge to another, and you can see now that I have closed up that hole. Okay, that's one way we can close up that hole. Let's see. The other way is to close polygon hole. So let's click on that and make sure I can't remember exactly. Okay, this one you just kind of highlight and go over your geometry, and it kind of gives you, tells you, hey, is this the hole you want to close up? So the way it's doing it, I don't want it to do it that. Oop, there we go. That's how I want to do it. So if you just move around to different edges, it'll get what you want. So there we go. All closed up using the bridge tool and the close polygon hole. Okay, so there we go. There's one end of my arm. Now I'm going to delete these because why should I create all of my arms individually? Why not create one arm and duplicate parts or pieces of it? Now I can remove geometry and redo geometry as needed. Okay, so cube 2. We're going to go take a look at the other end of it. So I'm going to go back into my top view, and let's just go look at the other end. Now for this end, I want to get rid of the geometry on the outside here and leave the tab that goes into the middle here. So what I want to do is get my knife tool again. I'm going to make sure I am on polygon mode. Go to Mesh, Create, get my knife. It is still on loop cut, so I'm going to just come in here a little ways. And by looking down here, I can tell that my insert, where I'm going to want to insert this part, is roughly a little more than 1 grid square here. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to make it just a little more than 1 grid square on this. Okay. And that will be fine. I'm going to grab my rectangle selection tool. I am in polygon mode, so I'm going to try to grab that polygon, and my only select visible elements is unchecked, so deleting that will get rid of that geometry, and deleting that will get rid of that geometry. And then I need to go into my perspective mode, and I'm going to close those polygon holes. So I'm in polygon mode, go to Mesh, Create, Close Polygon Hole, and that looks about what I want, and that as well. So now you see that I have the basics of the arm that I want. If I was to duplicate this and go to modeling mode and grab my move tool, you can see if I slide this down, they fit together like a puzzle. Now I would probably want to move them a little bit. They should be occupying the same space, and I actually want a little bit of a gap. Not that big of a deal. Okay? So it depends on how detailed you want to get with this. These would be connected with a pivot point. So you can either use a Boolean object and put a cylinder through here to make your hole, and then use a cylinder to use as your pivot. That's fine. Or you could just fake it. You know, it's really up to you. You could make a cylinder change its axis. Let's see, I want X. Bring it down. Bring the height up. So there, now I have my fake pivot. That is totally up to you. I am going to get a hypernurbs, and I'm going to drop my cube into my hypernurbs. That's right. I need, let's see. I need, okay. What's happening here is I have my hypernurbs, and I dropped both objects into it, and only one of them is being hypernurbed. So what I can do is I can grab both of these objects and I can group them, and now my null is being hypernurbed and it's working the way I want. Or you can create two hypernurbed objects and keep each one in. So there's different reasons why you would want to do it different ways, depending on how you want to do it. But now you see that I have just a little bit of more of a sleek look. It just smooths it out. It depends on what you're going for. Now I still want to come in here and I want to modify this geometry, and that looks a little funky there. I don't like the way my geometry is. I don't like the way this angle here is working, but there we go. I'm going to turn off my hypernurbs, and it might be because of the way these are intersecting. Let's take cube 2 and we're going to move it down. And I actually just want to, I'm going to go ahead and delete that. I was using it as a test, but I'm pretty much, I know some things that I have to do now. So I'm going to come in here, and I think one of the best ways, I can either move these sides outwards or move these sides inwards. So I'm going to grab my polygon tool, and I'm going to grab this, and I'm just going to slide it in a little bit. And here goes my ignorance. I know there's a way that I could move these equally. Let's see. Is it? Of course, we would want to move them equally. Let me back up. Okay, so a couple different ways that I can do that. I can click, and then now as I'm moving, you can see that it's giving me the increments that I'm moving in. Well, if I use shift, then it could snap, and I could easily get 10, 20, or 30. 20 is probably fine. And then I could grab the other side and make sure that I'm only moving it 20 as well. That's probably one of the easiest ways to make sure that my measurements are accurate and correct and equal. Okay, let's turn back on our hypernurbs, and I'm going to copy this again, drop it into the null, slide, whoa, back up, modeling mode. That will allow me to, whoops, that didn't work the way I wanted. Modeling mode. There we go. I want to move the whole object, not just part or some of the polygons. And line these up. So that wonkiness here is not from my intersecting geometry. It must have been from where I cut them up and how I cut them up. I think making less cuts would probably work better. So there we go. Now they're somewhat hingeable. Now there's different things you can do. Let's take, and I'm going to take off of my hypernurbs, and I'm going to delete cube 2 again. And I'm just using that cube 2 just to keep referencing it. And some of you might be going, make an instance, make an instance. Well, okay, sure, why not? I have cube 2 selected. And where is that instance? I think they moved it on. Here we go, instance. So now every time I change this one, the other one will change as well, which that can work, but in the end, I'm going to just make this for reference, because in the end I want to add a little bit of uniqueness to the different pieces. So okay, back to cube 2, and I'm going to turn off the instance. And what I want to do now is add a little bit of just stuff to the sides. So I'm going to grab my polygon tool, and I want to select this polygon. Then I want to come over to the other side and select, so I'm holding down Shift and select that polygon. I'm then going to come to Mesh, Create Tools, and I want to do an extrude inner. And what I want to do is I want to come inwards a little bit, and that's good. And then I'm going to do Mesh, Create Tools, Extrude, and I want to come out a little bit. And then I'm going to inner extrude again. Let's see, Create Tools, Extrude Inner. Except this time I'm going to go out, or back out. Okay, and back to the extrude, and I can get to the last tools that I've used here. So I'm going to use this and just go to extrude. And I want to make a little bit of geometry there. And I'm going to turn back on my hypernurbs. And you see that what I just did is I created this profile, this side to my arm. And all that is really doing is it's just making it look nicer, making it look cooler. I just wanted to add something so that it was a little different, a little uniqueness. Okay? And that was the entire reason for doing that. Non-functional, purely for visibility. Okay. So let's see. Now, if you're going to put hydraulics onto your pieces, you need places for your hydraulics to connect to. So I'm going to turn off my hypernurbs. I'm going to kind of roll around here, and what I'm going to do is use my live selection tool, and I'm going to shift select. Let's see, I want this polygon, and shift select that polygon. I'm going to grab my extrude tool, and I'm going to extrude these up. Then I'm going to turn my hypernurbs back on just to kind of see what those look like. And that's not bad. Remember, I'm going for this really curvy metal look. Let's see. I could change that a little bit. And I actually think I'm going to get my move tool and I'm going to move those polygons up a little more. And I want to push them in a little bit. Like that. Okay. Alright. And you will see where this is going when we... I'm going to turn this back on. What this is going to do is there's going to be 2 more of these right around in here, and the hydraulics will hook from there to there. Okay? So, turn back off my instance object, and I'm going to turn off my hypernurbs, and I need to make a cut in here so that I have the geometry to extrude up. So, alright, I am on polygon mode. I'm going to go to mesh, create, knife, and I'm still on loop. And I need to be careful here because with my extrude nurbs, making loop cuts is going to change some things. So I don't think I want loop on. Go to options. I'm going to take and use line. So line. And I want to cut across this way, so I think if I go to edge mode, can I? Yes, that's what I want to do right there. So, can I press escape? Yes. Okay, so what I did is I started making a cut, and I didn't want to finish the cut because I couldn't see all my geometry. I'm also going to go into my top view to do this. Let's see. There's my top arms. So I want my cut roughly in here. This is going to allow me to come across and make a straighter line. And it looks like, okay, holding shift will allow me to constrain to a straight line. And that's exactly what I want. So I'm going to let go of my mouse. And I'm going to come back in here. And I only have one cut, it seems. So that might be part of this single. So I'm going to Command Z, go back into my top view, uncheck the single, and okay, that's not what I want. There we go, and hold down Shift to make it a nice straight line. Now I let go of my Shift. Oh boy. It's not undoing my cut. Strange. I'm undoing all kinds of other things. Alright, let's go to point mode. Go to the move. Maybe it didn't make my cut. I only have one piece of geometry. Why is my cutting not wanting to work? Knife tool. Restrict to selection. Let me uncheck that. Okay. That's interesting. So it seems troubleshooting. All right. Maybe if I do it in my perspective view, normally. Okay, so doesn't look like I have well, yes I do. So can I Apple Z that? Yes. Okay, so I'm going to Apple Z that cut. I'm going to come back up here. Let's see. Not going to lie to you. I normally use loop cut for most of my cuts. And so I don't want to be in point mode. I want to be in edge mode. I want a cut to go across. Nope. Escape. I'm going to shift, click, escape. So I have one of my cuts I want. I'm going to click and click. And there we go, escape. Okay. So it looks like this single, what it did is it made it so that I have to click in each place rather than clicking and dragging and letting go. So I'm gonna put these two checkboxes back, and I'm going to click, drag across, and let go. So that's what it was. It was the single. When I uncheck that, it takes more than the one click. So it was basically click here, and then click here, and then, okay? So you can keep clicking, like click, 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 and make a zigzag line or everywhere if you wanted. All right, back to my live selection tool. Back into polygon mode. Now I'm going to grab this polygon, hold down Shift, grab this polygon. I'm going to stretch out a little bit, and I want to extrude. So I know I used that tool recently. Going to extrude up. Now these don't need to be as big as my other pieces. So I'm going to double extrude these, just extrude them a little bit more. I'm going to turn back on my instance and just take a look at this, and I'm actually going to undo that second extrude. And what that's going to do is I want to keep them down here. That's going to give me more distance. More distance from here to here, which is going to give me more hydraulic throw distance. So, alright, well, part one is done. I hope you have enjoyed. I hope you've learned a thing or two, and I hope you're not asleep. So, part two, next time. In part two, we'll be taking a look at the hydraulics, setting up the hydraulics. We will probably take a look at the Boolean object for cutting holes in our geometry here. We're going to make a hole here for the pivot. We're going to make a hole here for the hydraulic pieces. So come back for part 2.